So a friend kind of wanted me to make this video, and I felt like I needed to get my thoughts out in a long form sort of way because I don't think I would be able to get my words out correctly without it. Um, so hopefully I can express my feelings on the subject matter at hand. Um, and the subject matter is why death metal and hardcore tend to not mix in the modern age. And I'm gonna be completely honest, there is a major asterisk on that because like Dying Fetus is very hardcore influenced. Internal Bleeding are very hardcore influenced. I think those are very good bands. I like Voracious Contempt a lot. I mean like Dying Fetus, Destroy the Opposition, those are good records, right? But like whenever I like see a hardcore band, I'm just like, oh my god, no, don't even bother. And it took me a while to properly understand why that is, but I feel like I'm starting to get more of the words for it over time. Um, so like the first thing that comes to mind is just the tempo. The tempo of a lot of these bands is like very slow and mid-paced, and usually that's like fine in a hardcore setting. But like for death metal, it just kind of feels like a very similar slog as to something you would hear in like an atmospheric black metal record, where you're just kind of having to stand there for the most part, and then it's just dun 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 like some slam or whatever, and it's not particularly interesting. But if that was it, then I probably wouldn't like like Devourment or like Internal Bleeding. But I think the issue arises when they never speed it up whatsoever. So all you have is just like this like somewhat groovy feel to it and nothing else. Like I might as well just listen to like one of the later Sepultura records at that point. Like it's not very good. But if it was only that, I feel like I wouldn't be able to enjoy something like I don't know Chaos AD um or what's another record or just like most brutal death metal because a lot of brutal death metal is very hardcore influence, right? But I think I was listening to it was one of these new bands like one of the new Frozen Soul records. It could have been that. There was like one particular one. It was like very Sing with Suga Bog. Uh, but yes, that general um area of like music, and I kind of you can kind of notice, yeah, they really like tuning their guitars down to like be standard, and like I'm fine with that if you want to play in that general area. But the issue is the melodies tend to be so simple and like so brain dead that it gets to the point where it's just not even recognizable melodically. All I really hear is just chug, 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 and then basically nothing else because that's what the entire record is for. It's just it'll have like a blast beat here and there, but the melody will be so simple and so down tuned to the point where I can't really make a distinct melody that would stick in my head. And it like you can write like interesting melodies as a band, um, you know, mostly playing lower notes. I mean like DSI is a really good example of it. I mean for me, I really like listening to Incinerate Him. I like listening to Serpents of the Light, which is more in the upper register, like the DSI self title. But like everyone knows what like Dead by Dawn sounds like, or Sacrificial Suicide, and all of those songs. But you know, those have like an actual purpose and like a direction with the melody, and I feel like it actually ends up going somewhere. But in the case of like these hardcore influenced death metal bands, I just don't really feel that. Like, and it doesn't help either when a lot of these bands don't particularly seek to have a sound of their own. A big example of this is Frozen Soul, where even praisers of the band just say it's bolt thrower but cold. And like, first off, I don't even think that the band really sounds like bolt thrower in the first place, to be completely honest. Um, because bolt thrower kind of tends to make way more interesting music, but I guess that's besides the point. I think the thing that bothers me with them is that a lot of people say they're like icy and cold, but if you did not know that the band was called Frozen Soul and they had like this whole ice thing going on, no one would be able to tell. It just sounds like run of the mill death metal for like through and through. And if that's kind of what we're dealing with for like hardcore influenced death metal, that's rough. That is very, very rough. Um, other examples of this is like 200 Saboons, where it's just very a lot of mid pace, a lot of slower parts, and like yeah, that's fine to a degree if you want to do that, sure. But it just gets really tiring when the melodies are so mind-numbingly simple. Bodybox, like I all I remember is the hardcore callouts and the people doing karate when I had to see them live because I think they were opening for Devourment and like Suffocation, which yeah, that sort of thing. I think it kind of hit me when I was seeing Tribal Gaze with Sepultura and Exodus, and I was just bored out of my mind for Tribal Gaze. The guy walked out with a Hatebreed shirt, with a fat guy on the guitar, so hardcore stereotype right there, I guess. And it was just, oh my god. I just feel like this is not the right time or like the right mood for it. And if you're just not writing interesting melodies, if you're not doing anything interesting, um, I have no reason to really listen to you, like at all. Um, and it especially get that feeling when, in the case of a band like Tribal Gaze, I thought, oh, they're opening for Sepultura, right? Um, no, they just sound like death metal. They're nothing particularly interesting at all. It's just the same hardcore influence. Like um, a lot of these guys tend to have more humor in them, and I don't mind that. I mean, like I can have like a laugh every now and then, even though maybe it's not like my most preferred thing in the world. But um, yeah, I don't know, because I guess if I were to list like one band that I thought was like okay, was like Necrot, which is a pretty good band, but I don't think they're hardcore influence to me. They just sound, kind of more traditional, if anything. But I guess more so is in the band Sanguisugabog. And I'm not gonna say that I find like their first album or like their first EP incredible. Those suck. But like Homicidal Ecstasy, Hideous Aftermath, I'm gonna be honest, I find them all right. I find them all right. I couldn't exactly tell you what makes those different, other than I think I just find some of their grooves a little more engaging, and that groove is not really there on Tortured Whole. And like Hideous Aftermath feels more like traditional death metal than the rest, and it has some unique ideas. I think it takes a industrial approach to a couple of the songs. There's more like weird, wacky, dissonant chords that you don't hear those normally. And I really do appreciate that. Maybe it's just because like I'm a 6 Feet Under fan, and you know 6 Feet Under is a bit more groovy and intense, so of course I'll be more receptive to it. But even then, I just feel like the only band that's worthwhile is Necro. I'm gonna look up on Metal Archives to see what um they're compared to. Vastum, Autopsy, let's see, Morbid Angel. Uh, I always heard a little bit of like Serpents of the Light when I like saw them live, but I seem to be alone in that statement, so maybe I have to do some re-listening to a few albums before I can, you know, really make a say. But you know, I just kind of wish more bands, if they were to go into a specific direction, um, that involves hardcore, they would, implement it in a way that, at the very least, has melodic interest. Because when I listen back to those Development records, a lot of them have like a lot of melodic interest because they have regular death metal riffs like just interspersed throughout, and it makes so much sense with it. And then also there's like interesting drum parts, and I'm gonna be honest, a lot of the hardcore influenced death metal, they tend to forget to have interesting drumming somehow. Um, like it's less so in slam, where they literally just know they don't have any melody, so the only thing they have going for them is like their drummer. But even then, there's only so many like mid-paced chugs that one can really take before the drumming feels monotonous. Even if it's like the best drummer playing like the most interesting like mid-pace fills, it just doesn't pan out in that case. So, given that sort of idea, I kind of feel like that's something that Dying Fetus and Suffocation, all those hardcore influenced brutal death metal guys actually seem to understand that they are still a death metal band and their roots are in death metal. But when you listen to a band like, Tribal Gaze or um what's the name? Frozen Soul, you can kind of tell that they're not the most experienced in death metal because I feel like they reduce it to like a simple idea of just having growls and that's it. Um and it's not a very diverse vocally. Um and the only thing is just mid pace dun 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 or some variation of that, and even like fast parts will just not have anything going on in them melodically. Um so it's like, yeah, what's the point? Like what is the point of like hardcore influenced death metal? It just doesn't pan out for me. Um when it does pan out, they usually have something of melodic interest. They tend to have a very clear expertise in death metal first, with some influences from elsewhere, and it generally is something I would listen to. I like a lot of brutal death metal. I'm wearing a Cryptopsy shirt right now. Like, um, it's that sort of thing. But a lot of the modern hardcore influenced death metal seems to strip away the melody, seems to strip away any sort of semblance of speed, tends to try and focus entirely on a groove that just doesn't pan out because they're only playing at one tempo, and if they're playing at a faster tempo, they're not doing anything interesting that would make the song stick in the head. Because you know at what point have you ever heard someone say something like, yeah, my favorite death metal band is Tribal Gaze or Frozen Soul? Like, no one says that. They're all either copying someone or their sound is so boring that it doesn't matter. It's utterly pointless to listen to a lot of these bands because they either are aping something, they're trying to add elements in a way that is so awfully uninteresting that it just kind of comes off as, people call it caveman death metal, but I feel like using that term to excuse the fact that the songwriting sounds incredibly lazy. Like, I pretty much like every late career band sounds less tired than this for the most part. And I don't know how you can start your debut album already sounding tired, and you know a lot of the things they do, it's just feeling tired. But like, when I know it's not a matter of everyone's done everything, so why even try? Because I think Necrot's a great band. Like, yeah, I can see that they're kind of compared to a lot of specific bands. Autopsy was one that's mentioned, Bolt Thrower too. But I feel like I could pick out Necrot, and like, I've heard bands where I could pick them out in the modern age, and it feels like something different. I remember the band Void, the thrash metal one from this decade. I feel like they have a sound of their own, and I don't really listen to them like that, but they're certainly much better than a lot of what else has been offered by a lot of these death metal guys. And you can kind of tell at the end of the day that a lot of these guys are just not attracting the same audience as actual death metal fans. I've seen the people who go to you know a Bodybox show, they tend to be like fucking brutal, dude, about like fucking everything, and then like you ask them about like what their favorite Morbid Angel album is, and they go silent because they've just literally never heard them. A true story. There's this guy in my area that always wears the same Ingested shirt, and one time I tried talking to him about the later I think there was it was like at a Christian show where Pyrexia was opening for them, and I think I mentioned that one of the bands uh was kind of similar to like later death. I think it was it was like Abysmal Dawn, and they were like, what's that? And I'm like, death, like leprosy, pull the plug, scream bloody gore. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, and it was like, no, I don't listen to that stuff. But like, you're at a Christian show. You're wearing a death metal shirt. Not for a good band, mind you, but you are wearing a death metal shirt. And beyond that, you're also seeing a lot of underground bands that like, you know, I would wager that the guys you're seeing have all listened to like the entire Death discography, and you know their opinion on it could vary. I mean, I'm only really listening to Scream Bloody Gore myself, um, but in any case, why are you here? And the thing is, it's the real answer is just they're kind of a hardcore kid. They do karate at the shows, for you know cephalotripsy, for like uh that they'll see like shit like Carnifex, and like even if I find like a lot of these bands, you know, to be good, I mean I'm pretty neutral towards Carnifex myself, like even though they're like a you know, oh they're a deathcore band, but you know, um I like having my own opinions. Um and then there's you know cephalotripsy. I believe uterovaginal insertion of extirpated anomalies is one of the greatest slam death metal albums ever. But I just kind of feel like this is appealing to a different audience. And not only is it appealing to a different audience from regular death metal fans, it also kind of makes a worse version of the genre because, like, at least in the case of, I don't know, a beatdown band like Earth Crisis or Terror, or I don't think Terror's in, but like a lot of hardcore bands, Terror, what's the one I saw recently? Biohazard, um, you know, Integrity, all of those bands also have pretty distinct melodies because they don't exclusively play the lowest notes on their fretboards. They like mix it up. They have recognizable tunes. Like you could put on, and you know they also have some you know thrashy elements. Sometimes, well, in some cases, some bands do. Like I would say, um, I feel like Earth Crisis might. I don't actually remember. It's been a while since I listened to them, but Vegan Reich is like a crossover band that you know I would call hardcore. And even though they're a hardline, I do enjoy those guys too. And you know they have a you know a melody to them. They have fast parts. They're not just mid paced or like slow. And you know they don't tune their guitars to like drop A or something. Um, and they actually have a lot of variation for that. But then you go to a band like Torture where it's just kind of one thing. Why is it just one thing? I don't know. Apparently, it's what sells now. And a lot of bands kind of come out and do the same thing. Now we have a lot of bands that talk about like smoking weed and they have like meme shirts. And it's just like none of it's really very good. A lot of it's just not very good. But for bands that do properly implement hardcore, um, I do want to say like yeah, those guys are awesome. If um you know, I don't know. It's just I guess I could give more props to like I don't know Brodekin, regurgitation maybe, uh, Aria eruption. Yeah, sure, Aria eruption. Yeah, all of that stuff is can be great, but I think you people got to try more. Honestly, this is Tony, LA City of Chaos. I'm out of here.